The cafe smelled of roasted beans and warm pastries, but to Emily, it smelled mostly of nerves. She stood outside the glass door for a full minute before pushing it open, clutching her worn purse as if it contained treasures instead of a handful of coins and a single $5 bill. The bell above the door jingled, and she immediately felt out of place among the chatter of couples, the clinking of silverware, and the steady hum of espresso machines. She took a seat near the window, partly for the view and partly because it felt safer to sit where the evening light softened her features. She ran her fingers over the chipped wood of the table, trying not to think about how her blind date might judge her clothes. Her sweater, a hand-me-down from her cousin, was fraying at the cuffs. She had stitched the holes as best as she could, but she could still see where the fabric had thinned. She pulled her sleeves down, hiding the rough patches as though hiding her whole life story. Her eyes drifted to the menu. She knew what she could afford before she opened it, but she scanned the list anyway, as though pretending she had choices. The cheapest coffee, black, no refills. It would leave just enough for the tip, if she counted her coins carefully. She told herself it was fine. Coffee was enough. She could smile, make conversation, and leave before anyone noticed how little she had to spend. A couple nearby laughed as their plates arrived, steaming bowls of pasta, garlic bread on the side. Emily's stomach clenched with hunger, but she lowered her gaze quickly, embarrassed at the thought of longing for something so simple. She wrapped her hands around the empty cup in front of her as if the warmth might soothe her nerves. At the next table, a man with broad shoulders and kind eyes sat with a little girl, her hair tied in two playful braids. They looked so content together, sharing a plate of pancakes, the girl giggling as syrup dripped onto her fingers. Emily tried not to stare, but she couldn't help envying the easy joy between them. She wondered briefly what it would be like to sit at a table where someone cared enough to notice when she was quiet, to ask why her smile didn't reach her eyes. The minutes dragged. Emily glanced at her watch, biting her lip. 15 minutes late already. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe she had been foolish to believe in blind dates and promises whispered by friends who insisted she deserved a chance. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, straightened her posture, and practiced a smile in the reflection of the cafe window. The truth was, she wasn't waiting for a date anymore. She was waiting for hope to walk through that door, in whatever form it might take. Daniel stirred the last of the maple syrup into his coffee, watching his daughter Lily spear the final piece of pancake with her fork. Weekend breakfasts at the cafe had become their ritual, a small island of normalcy in a life otherwise filled with boardroom meetings, deadlines, and the weight of raising a child alone. He treasured these mornings more than anything: Lily's laughter, her endless questions, her wide-eyed wonder at the simplest things. But today his attention kept drifting. At first, it was accidental. His eyes caught the woman at the next table, sitting alone by the window. She had a kind of quiet stillness about her, like someone trying hard to appear invisible. Daniel had seen that look before. He had worn it himself years ago, after his wife's death, when grief had made him shrink from the world. There was something familiar in her posture, in the way she pressed her hands together as if holding her courage in place. He tried not to intrude, but as he poured Lily another glass of water, he noticed the woman smoothing her sleeve. Again and again, as though worried someone might notice the frayed edge. Then came the way she unfolded her receipt, carefully, almost reverently, studying the numbers before tucking it away as if every cent mattered. That small gesture struck him deeper than he expected. "Daddy," Lily whispered, leaning toward him. "Why does that lady look so lonely?" Daniel's heart clenched. Children saw things adults often ignored. He glanced at the woman again, trying to find the right words for his daughter. "Maybe she's just waiting for someone," he said gently. Lily tilted her head, unconvinced. "But she's not smiling. Don't people smile when they're waiting for friends?" He didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his coffee, watching the woman pretend to study her menu even though her eyes didn't move across the page. She looked like she was bracing herself for disappointment, and Daniel wondered who had made her carry such heaviness on a night that should have been filled with possibility. For years, he had trained himself to read people, business partners, investors, competitors, but this wasn't about strategy. This was about empathy. He saw not weakness in her carefulness, but strength, the courage to sit there despite everything that told her not to. And though he didn't know her name or her story, he couldn't shake the feeling that her silence was louder than anyone else's voice in the room. Lily tugged at his sleeve again, her eyes wide and innocent. "Can we talk to her, Daddy? She looks like she needs a friend." Daniel smiled faintly, reaching over to brush a crumb from his daughter's cheek. "Not yet, sweetheart," he murmured. "Let's give her a little time." Still, he found himself listening, not out of rudeness, but out of concern. When her date finally arrived, late, distracted, careless, Daniel's jaw tightened. He watched the man order food without even asking the woman what she wanted, watched her smile politely while her hands trembled against her coffee cup. Something inside Daniel shifted. It wasn't anger, it was something deeper, a protective instinct he hadn't felt since the days when his wife was alive. Emily's blind date swept into the cafe like he owned the place, his phone pressed to his ear, voice too loud for the cozy atmosphere. Without so much as a glance at her, he slid into the chair across from her, continuing his conversation as if she weren't even there. Emily clasped her coffee cup with both hands, the warmth grounding her against the cold rush of disappointment flooding through her chest. Yeah, I'll close the deal tomorrow," her date barked into the phone, tossing his expensive watch onto the table. "Tell them if they don't like it, they can find someone else." "I don't beg." He finally ended the call, exhaling in irritation, before flashing Emily a quick grin. "Sorry, business. You know how it is." Emily nodded weakly, though she had no idea what business he was talking about. She wanted to believe the evening could still turn around, that maybe this was just nerves, but then he raised a hand to the waiter without even asking her preference. "Steak and fries, medium rare, and make it quick, I've got another appointment later," he said briskly. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "She'll just have whatever she wants." His tone carried the kind of dismissiveness that made Emily's stomach knot. She whispered for just another coffee, pretending it was by choice. Across the cafe, Daniel's jaw tightened. He wasn't eavesdropping, not intentionally, but the arrogance in the man's voice was impossible to ignore. He caught Lily staring at the scene too, her brows furrowed as if she could already sense the imbalance of kindness at that table. Daniel placed a steadying hand on hers, but his gaze lingered on Emily. As the minutes passed, her date launched into a monologue about his achievements, his car, his gym routine, anything and everything that revolved around himself. Emily responded with polite smiles, small nods, and quiet hums, but inside, each word chipped away at the fragile hope she had built up for this night. The food arrived, a sizzling plate of steak set before him, filling the air with a scent that made Emily's empty stomach ache. He didn't notice she had ordered nothing but her plain coffee. He cut into the meat with relish, talking around mouthfuls of food, completely unaware of how her fingers tightened around her cup, or how she kept her eyes lowered to hide the sting in them. Daniel watched closely, a storm brewing in his chest. He wasn't a man who believed in interfering in strangers' lives, but there was something unbearable about seeing her sit there, shrinking further into herself with every passing second. He recognized the look of someone trying desperately not to cry in public, the way she straightened her back and held her smile together like fragile glass. And then came the breaking point. Her date checked his phone again, muttered something about being late for the real party, and stood up, leaving half his steak untouched. "Good luck with your coffee," he said carelessly, already walking toward the door without a backward glance. Emily sat frozen. Her cheeks burned, her throat ached, and for a moment she wished she could vanish into the walls. All she had were her 5 crumpled dollars, a cold coffee, and a humiliation so raw it left her trembling. She blinked rapidly, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. At the next table, Lily's small voice pierced the silence. "Daddy, why did he leave her like that?" Daniel's heart clenched as he looked at Emily, sitting so small in the corner of the cafe, and he knew in that instant that he couldn't just sit still anymore. Emily sat in silence, staring at the faint coffee ring left on the table, as if it were the only thing holding her together. Her date's absence left the air heavier than before, filled with whispers from nearby tables and the occasional clink of silverware. She could feel eyes on her, strangers glancing with pity, some with curiosity, but she didn't dare look up. If she met their gaze, the tears she had fought so hard to hide might finally spill. She lowered her head further, folding her trembling hands in her lap, wishing she could disappear. Then came a voice, soft, warm, and unexpected. "Excuse me," it said gently. Emily blinked, lifting her eyes in surprise. Standing by her table was the man from earlier, the one with kind eyes and the little girl who had giggled over pancakes. Up close, he looked even more composed, though there was a gentleness in his expression that disarmed her. Beside him, his daughter clutched his hand, her bright eyes fixed on Emily with concern. "I don't mean to intrude," he continued, his voice calm, careful not to startle her. "But my daughter seems to think you could use some company. Would it be all right if we sat with you for a bit?" For a moment, Emily could only stare. She was too shocked to answer, too wary of kindness that seemed impossible after the cruelty she'd just endured. Her lips parted, then closed again, and she found herself searching his face for any trace of mockery. She found none. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, her small voice breaking the silence. "You looked sad," she told Emily matter-of-factly, as only a child could. "And Daddy says sometimes people just need someone to sit with them." Something inside Emily cracked, not in a painful way, but in a way that let a sliver of light in. Her throat tightened, her eyes stung, and before she could stop herself, she gave the smallest, trembling smile. "Yes," she whispered, "I'd like that very much." Daniel pulled out a chair across from her, guiding Lily into the seat beside him. The shift was subtle but profound. The emptiness of her table, once a symbol of rejection, was now filled with warmth. They began to talk, not about anything heavy, but about little things that softened the edges of the moment. Lily eagerly told Emily about her love for chess, her favorite books, and how she sometimes tried to cook pancakes on her own when Daddy wasn't looking. Daniel added his own stories, quiet but steady, about weekend adventures and his daughter's endless curiosity. Emily found herself laughing, genuine, unforced laughter that surprised even her. She spoke about her dreams of becoming a teacher, about how she loved books more than anything, and how she sometimes imagined her life turning out differently. Not once did Daniel interrupt. Not once did his eyes show pity. He listened as though every word she said mattered. Time slipped away unnoticed. The cafe grew quieter, the evening light fading into a golden glow that painted the windows. Emily forgot about the $5 crumpled in her purse, forgot about the cruel date who had left her humiliated. All that remained was the warmth of connection, the kind that asked for nothing, yet gave everything. When it was finally time to leave, Daniel didn't offer grand gestures or sweeping promises. He simply rose, helping Lily with her coat, and turned back to Emily. His voice was steady, almost hesitant, but filled with sincerity. "Sometimes," he said, meeting her gaze, "the best things begin in the most unexpected places. Maybe we could see you again." Emily held his eyes, her heart racing in a way it hadn't in years. For the first time that evening, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And with a nod and a smile that reached her eyes, she whispered, "I'd like that."